What's up, everybody? I just wanted to get on here real quick. It's your boy Rico Suave, the host of the Project Baby and Me podcast. I wanted to get on here and just give a little bit of information. Unity is my thing, and I like when we're unified. So I just wanted to get on here and share a little bit of history with you guys. Long before the modern recognition of Afro-Indigenous identities in the Americas, there were people of African descent living in the Western Hemisphere whose presence challenges simplistic narratives of settlement. When the Spanish, Dutch, and English navigators first made contact in the late 15th and 16th centuries, several chroniclers and explorers recorded encounters with indigenous peoples whose physical features, cultural practices, and material culture they associated with African origins, leading later observers to speculate about earlier connections across the Atlantic. As the Spanish conquistadors and other European powers advanced into the interior of the Americas, they often relied on diverse networks of communication. In many cases, Africans, both enslaved, coerced, or allied, served as intermediates and interpreters between Europeans and native populations because Africans already were familiar with the native tongue and traditions. European commanders sometimes used these Africans to communicate with groups who otherwise had no direct linguistic contact with the newcomers. In addition to these early colonial observations, there are a number of traditional oral and speculative historical narratives about transatlantic voyages from Africa to the Americas that predate Columbus. The best known of these is the proposition that voyagers from the medieval Malian Empire, possibly including figures like Mansa Musa, Abu Bakr, reached the Atlantic and may have crossed to the New World in the early 14th century. While this idea has been popularized in recent decades in books and in documentaries, mainstream academia, historians, and archaeologists generally regard direct evidence for transatlantic voyages as unproven. There is no consensus in the scholarly community that connects archaeological or documentary proof exists for African crossings prior to the age of European exploration. Now, this is false because the Malian Empire has all the proof that we need. So when scholars claim that there is no proof, there are no artifacts, there are no writings, there is nothing that supports this, it's a lie because the Malian Empire still holds all the proof that we need. Nonetheless, the existence of communities in the Americas today who identify as Afro-Indigenous, whose ancestors were indigenous peoples with long histories of interconnection with Africans, brought both before and after European arrival, attest to the complex, intertwined histories of Africa and the Americas. These communities preserve languages, traditions, and genealogies that reflect both African heritage and deep roots on the continents of the Western Hemisphere, underscoring that peoples of African descent are not solely a post-Columbian phenomenon, but an integral part of the fabric of early American history. And this is the thing. There's so much fighting between indigenous Americans and the descendants of Africa, saying, well, you're a Wabo, or, well, I'm indigenous and you guys came over a land bridge, you're from Siberia. And here's the thing, modern research and modern science shows that indigenous Americans have been here well over 30,000 years. Some will even claim well over 50,000 years. What that means is that it predates any so-called land bridge or Siberian theory. Not only that, but any European that would have come here after any voyages from Africa and they saw anybody of African features or anything like that, of course they would consider them indigenous because they didn't know them to be from anywhere else but the Americas. Now, we have to understand that there's been a narrative that has been spun on our people and we've all fallen for it. And, nothing against my indigenous brothers and sisters who live on the, who are part of a federally recognized tribe or live on the reservation, but you guys are happy with whatever the government gave you. Not only that, but our ancestors were put in school so that we would forget all of this. We have to stop fighting. We have to stop screaming at each other, downing each other. It's not either or. It's both and. It's not either blacks or descendants of Africa, excuse me for using that derogatory term, but the descendants of Africa are the only indigenous people. And it's not, well, you guys are Wabos. It's not. It's both. there are both descendants of Africa who are indigenous or considered indigenous to the Americas by modern terms. Modern meaning that the country of America is a modern country. You get what I'm saying? Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. I want to expand your mind. I want you guys to think a little bit more. And not only that, just to go even deeper, and we'll be covering this in another podcast, on the Let's Think podcast with Jake McGriff Ill and Sheikh 7 Islam Ill. We will be covering this again, the next part of, Mexico, the Moorish connection. And that has to do with the Spaniards. And Spaniards having Moorish blood, regardless if they want to believe it or not.